Good morning. I'm Carolyn Stetson, today's worship associate. Before we enter into our service this morning, I draw your attention to the announcements printed in your order of service, including these. From the Albany UU Worship Associates, from the Personnel Committee and the Board of Trustees, we are so pleased to announce that starting September 30th, Nicolie Frogy will be our new Congregational Life Coordinator. She brings skills with social media and community building, a commitment to Albany UU, and a warm and welcoming presence. Please welcome Nicolie to that role. And now, let us settle ourselves for this morning's service. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Albany, also known as Albany UUU. I'd like to extend a special welcome to those who are visiting with us this morning. Whether in person or online, we aspire to be a beloved community, open and welcoming to all. If you'd like to know more about our congregation, please join us after any service for coffee and conversation, and check out our welcome table in the lobby. Now, please turn off your electric devices, and I invite you to briefly say hello to someone near to you or online. Our opening song, number 346, Come Sing a Song with Me.
Our story this morning is What Makes Us Human by Victor Dio Santos with illustrations by Anna Forlati. That is the end of our story today. Now is the time in our service when our children, youth, and their volunteers go off to their Sunday morning groups, and I invite the congregation to join in singing them out, number 414,
As you may have discerned from the story and perhaps even today's service title, our focus today is on words, powerful words that can inspire and heal and build connection or wound and belittle and divide. Words that can guide us into greater meaning or create obstacles to meaning. Words that are limited and problematic and yet perhaps hold untapped possibility. Religious words, language of reverence. We come here with varied perspectives and emotional responses to such words. And we will leave here with varied perspectives. This is not and never will be a faith that aspires to conformity. It is also not a faith that aspires to perpetual comfort. Sometimes we stretch. So whether you come with curiosity, enthusiasm, resistance, or even trauma around religious words, I invite you to bring as open a heart as is available to you today, and to take from this service what you need today. Carolyn's Worship Associate Reflection will explore one such word.
The word I want to speak about is sin. I came of age in the 60s and left a small town for college in the big city. This was the beginning of the famed Age of Aquarius. I can't claim to be a hippie. At best, a wannabe flower child. But I did go to Woodstock. My freshman year, I discovered that the do's and don'ts from the 1950s Methodist Sunday School no longer applied. And I discovered rather quickly that nobody really cared. which means I did a lot of the don'ts on that Sunday school list along with my fellow flower children. And lightning did not strike me. I became a 1960s sinner as the 1950s rules for sinners went the way of birth control pills and drug-dealing medical students. And I didn't feel particularly sinful. As a Methodist child, I learned that sin was a violation of divine will, and the church defined what was a sin. For example, my church had only recently decided that playing cards was not a sin. To sin was to guarantee your place in hell unless you confessed and repented and took communion. 4 opportunities a year to confess by taking communion, so sinners who don't take communion are guilty. Except for my fellow college students, they didn't act particularly guilty, and eventually neither did I. And when this supposed pillar of belief fell, so did all the rest of the pillars, and I walked away from a fear of sinning and from Christianity. But I still held on to some of the Methodist teachings about sin. In retrospect, I know that I hurt people who I sinned against, to use the original language. So regret and a wish to clean up my act are very real. Fearing the fires of hell doesn't stop me from making these mistakes. But facing the pain I caused can be an effective reminder. I doubt that I will ever be tempted to live the life of a flower child again, because the Sunday school teachings are still in there somewhere. And I don't question their value as a guide to lead a kind and moral life. But I will not burden my grandchildren with the words sin and sinner. I will remind them that their actions can hurt other folks, because the concept of sin as part of a way to live among your fellow humans still applies after millennia.
Here in religious community, we strive to live well among our fellow humans. And so we take this time in our service to notice and honor the joys and sorrows that each of us carries in our heart as we are present to each other and to what is good and hard in our lives. I am Sharon Babila. This is Debbie Rodriguez. We're part of the Pastoral Care Associates team who work with our minister, Reverend Ann, to provide spiritual care in this congregation. If there is something going on for you in your life, we are here for you. Please reach out to any of us.
Our first reading is the 8 Principles of Unitarian Universalism. Our denomination adopted 7 principles back in the 1980s, and for 40 years up until last year, these were our statements of who we are and what matters to us. Many congregations, including this one, also adopted an 8th principle more recently, and we will share all 8 with you. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience, the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. So ends the reading.
The second reading is That Which Holds All by Nancy Schaefer. Because she wanted everyone to feel included in her prayer, she said right at the beginning several names for the holy. Spirit, she said, Holy One, Mystery, God. But then, thinking these weren't enough ways of addressing that which cannot fully be addressed, she added particularities, saying, Spirit of life, Spirit of love, ancient Holy One, mystery we will not ever fully know, gracious God. And then, tongue loosened, she fell to naming superlatives as well. Most creative one, greatest source, closest hope, even though superlatives for the sacred seemed to her probably redundant. But then she couldn't stop. One who made the stars, she said, although she knew technically a number of those present didn't believe the stars had been made by anyone or thing, but just luckily happened. One who is an entire ocean of compassion, she said, and no one laughed. That which has been present since before the beginning, she said, and the room was silent. Then, although she hadn't imagined it this way, others began to offer names. Peace, said one. One my mother knew, said another. Ancestor, said a third. Wind, rain, breath, refuge. That which holds all. A child said water. Someone said Kuan Yin. Then womb, witness, great kindness, eternal stillness. And then there wasn't any need to say the things she'd thought would be important to say, and everyone sat hushed until someone said, Amen. That which holds all. The plowshare prayer, of which that was just the first part. There's more to come. All very different, and all very Unitarian Universalist. This faith is big enough to hold both literal ethical guidance and as much evocative metaphor and music as you like. The 8 principles and the values they lift up are central to Unitarian Universalism. Even though we now have a different expression of our values, the principles are still with us. They were created by years of wordsmithing, striving for the clearest, simplest, most inclusive and unambiguous language to describe Unitarian Universalism 40 years ago. We often disagreed about the details of practicing the principles, but there was some clarity. No squishy religious language. No hope, love, grace, mercy, or faith. No evil or sin. No spirit, no Holy One, no God, and no prayer of any kind. This was on purpose. The original 1961 principles did include the words faith and God. But the 7 principles, as adopted in 1985, reflected both a much-needed updating and the humanist thought that had become prevalent. The result was very ethical and literal. No poetry or metaphors to interpret, no imagery, no mystery, no explicit beliefs, no overtly religious language at all. I appreciated this grounding in the rational. I firmly believe that anyone who practices any religion should constantly evaluate the real-world impact of what they're doing. Our principles offered a guide. Am I bringing more compassion and justice into the world? How am I accountably dismantling racism? Whose inherent worth might I be overlooking right now? And I appreciated the striving for clarity. I like precision in words. Back when I was a patent attorney, I worked a lot with small biotech companies. In their patents, the difference between a precise definition and a sloppy one could affect whether the invention ever sees the light of day and even the future of the company. Literal clarity was my job and my comfort zone. And early on in my relationship with Unitarian Universalism, I carried this commitment to precise meanings for words into my church. I remember arguing, eloquently in my own mind, that we should not use the word spiritual because it means different things to different people, and some of us don't have any idea what it means. And how can we possibly use a word when we don't agree on its meaning? There's just one problem. Not everything that matters can be precisely defined. If we limit ourselves to words with clear, mostly unambiguous meanings, there are important things we will never talk about. We need the rational. But we also live in a world of great mystery, where we understand little and yet seek meaning and comfort, connection and inspiration. The words we have for that world are all wrong. They're too small and vague, and many have been used to abuse and oppress. It's tempting to build our life without any of them. But when we do, we find ourselves boxed into the rational, unable to explore even imperfectly what is beyond those walls, and unable to connect with others who are exploring that same territory along different paths. The way we think about our lives and this world is shaped and limited by the words available to us. In her TED Talk, cognitive scientist Lera Boroditsky shares this example. There's an Aboriginal community in Australia whose language does not have words for left and right. Instead, relative position is always defined using compass directions. Your northeast hand, the cup to your west-southwest. Try that sometime. Most of us can't do it. We would have a hard time correctly naming the direction of that cup, even with time to think about it. It is not going to happen mid-sentence. Our sense of direction is mostly not that good, because the words we use or don't use guide what we pay attention to, how we perceive our world and our place in it, and how we think. The words we use also shape our experiences. I think this is what the Presbyterian theologian Frederick Buechner was getting at when he said, "It is not that you feel love and then say, 'I love you,' but that until you say, 'I love you,' you have not fully loved." He goes on, in some important sense, the thing you are feeling doesn't fully exist until you have given a word to it. If we are to explore the world that exists beyond the rational, ethical framework, we need language to speak of it. Flawed, ambiguous, misused, and distressingly squishy though it may be. That language can also be helpful when we try to explain Unitarian Universalism. Way back in the day when the word spiritual was too much for me, it seemed so clear to me that I could just give someone one of those little cards that had the principles on it, and the veils would lift and they would understand and demand to be one of us. It rarely worked that way. I still remember one Jewish man who was so politely confused when I shared the principles with him. He didn't disagree with them. He said, "Of course, because these commitments are central to Judaism too." But he was puzzled that that seemed to be all there was. He immediately saw what it took me over a decade. The principles, important and central though they were, did not fully explain this faith, who we are deep down, what we trust in this world, what gives us hope. Our new statement of who we are, the 6 values with love at the center, may come closer, but it doesn't get us all the way there either. So then how do we articulate who we are? Often, not all that well. Most of us find it hard to explain Unitarian Universalism. And we make it harder than it needs to be. Because so often we shy away from words that might help us articulate the aspects of this faith that are beyond the rational and ethical. The love, the mystery, the hope, the spirit, the redemption and salvation even, the grace, the mercy, the blessing, the prayer. Words that might have been used as a sword against us, but that might also help us open, might help us grow. Our religious heritage gives us some words that carry the history and the insights of our ancestors. These words have power, for good and for evil. We could decide they're too corrupted from misuse to be redeemed and set them aside. That happens sometimes. For noble reasons, a desire to distance ourselves from the misuse and to be inclusive and welcoming. A refuge for those wounded by those words used as swords against them. But without those words, we limit ourselves and our children because we only pay attention to what we have words for. Take that word, evil, or sin. Without question, historically and currently sometimes used in ways that cause harm. But without these words, we risk becoming people who can only see inherent goodness, because we lack words for the inherent propensity for awfulness that is also part of being human. Without these words, we abandon the most emotionally laden language we have for speaking of systems of oppression, environmental devastation, cruelty, torture, genocide. Sometimes the word I need is evil, maybe even sin. And I need words that offer hope in the presence of such things. Without them, we limit our ability to speak truth about our full experience of the world we actually live in and who we are in that world. There are many progressive Christians and Unitarian Universalists who are not willing to abandon the words of our heritage to those who would use them to cause harm. We want their depth and their emotion and the way they can open us to greater experience and understanding. And we want to use them to help connect beyond these walls. These words are being reclaimed. That said, there are also people who come to Unitarian Universalism and to this very congregation with some form of religious trauma. Particular words can be triggering. If this is your experience, please honor what your body tells you. At some point, on your timetable, nobody else's, you might explore your experience, perhaps with some support, and see what you can ultimately reclaim from your religious past. We don't have to agree. We don't have to use the same words today or ever. At this point in my life, I sometimes use language of reverence. I haven't done it a lot around here, where it can be a barrier to communication for some. And there are some words, like sin and salvation, that I rarely use without saying something about how I'm using them. But if I don't use these words at all, it limits me. And it becomes a barrier to communication with those who long to hear those words. I will speak of grace, mercy, love, evil, blessing, faith, prayer, and God. Going forward, I may do it a little more often. I do so knowing that what I mean may not be what you mean, and knowing that you may make different choices about some or all of those words. I'm not interested in uniformity. I'm interested in the conversations we can have. My prayer is that each of us might develop our language of reverence and explore what these words mean to us and how we might perhaps use another word or two in the service of learning and growing and connecting. My prayer is that each of us might respect the language of reverence of those around us, knowing that we're all trying to use limited words to illuminate something so much bigger. My prayer is that this will not be a place of refuge from religious language, so much as a place where words are used expansively and voluntarily to heal rather than harm, to invite depth, not platitudes. And my prayer is that we will equip our children, not with our baggage, but with as many of these powerful tools as possible so they can grow and live to their fullest. Sermons are very heady things. Lots of words trying to put the mystery into a tidy intellectual box. So let's end with the final part of Spencer LaJoie's Plowshare Prayer. Perhaps allow it to invite you into another experience of some language of reverence.
This community of varied language is here because of the generosity of those who came before and those who are here today. Please give today in whatever amount feels right for you. If you're online, you can click on the tiny URL link in the chat window to contribute. Or you can text the number shown on the screen indicating the amount in purpose is shown. Or you can always mail a check. Here in Community Hall, you can give in those ways or place cash or a check in the basket that will come around during the offertory. The offering will be gratefully received.
In this world of mystery, may our hearts be ready to speak of things that might open us, that might help us grow. What are we going to do? As we bring our service to a close, please join in saying our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our service has ended, but all are invited for refreshments and conversation in Channing Hall. And if you're here with a child or youth, just a reminder, groups continue until 11:15, so please take this opportunity for a cup of coffee before you go collect your kids. And please come back next Sunday, when we will be here again with a service entitled The Work of Love. Till then, go in peace and return again in joy.